The dust is settling. You're very welcome to this post-election edition of Path to Power. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
Have you ever heard as much bluff and bluster as we've had in the week since we've had all the results, Ivan? The amount of posturing and posing, everyone claiming to have had enormous success. And then when it comes to Government Foundation, parity of esteem. That Fine Gael are going into the talks with Fianna Fáil thinking, well, we deserve to have exactly the same amount of time as Taoiseach for Simon Harris as Micheál Martin's going to get. You have to share the cabinet seats equally. I mean, do they really believe any of this stuff? Is it not going to be the case that it's going to be done on a pro rata basis? There's going to be 8 ministers for Fianna Fáil, 7 for Fine Gael, because that's what the numbers dictate. And that if it waits until January to form a new government, which means Simon Harris is getting the benefit of being an extra little bit of time as caretaker Taoiseach. Micheál Martin goes in as Taoiseach in January 2025 and hands over to Simon Harris in and around September 2027 with an election November 2029. Isn't that all there is to it?
Well, not bad. Well, first of all, when I switch on the radio, I'm losing the will to live. I mean, this talk about the Soc Dems and Labour and being involved in some way, will they, won't they go into government? They're not going to be asked to go into government.
I know.
Like, what a waste of time. Like, I immediately switch off the radio and say, what planet are you guys on in terms of irrelevancy?
You haven't been listening to the last word, so we haven't been indulging in that
some
type
of those
nonsense.
lengthy panels you have with Sarah Carey and Gary Murphy, I mean, I struggle. But anyway, the net point is this, where I disagree with you, is the only show in town is The Independents and the regional group within The Independents.
I was going to get there, but I'm just talking about the balance.
Okay, well, first of all, in fairness to you, because I met Sean Dorgan after we recorded our second episode last week, and you said, look, there's a very simple solution to the rotation, and that is to do proportionality. So it's 55%, 45%. If you look at the shares of seats, 48 plays 38. And actually, he said, that's a good HR solution to that. So, first of all, as regards negotiation, I made a big mistake. Over the years. So I would have negotiated with maybe up to 70 landlords, right? So I go in and I'd have a 1,500 square feet place and I'd say, right, and I tell you what, I'll give you 3,000 a month for this, I'll give you 5,000 a month for this, and I'd say, you can take it or leave it. There's a thing called the reciprocation principle. In other words, you're much better to say, I'll give you 4,000 if you want to give 5, because for everything you concede on, the reciprocation principle is the other person is morally obliged to reciprocate. So on the rotation thing, so Fianna Fáil concede, okay, we're not looking for a senior and junior partner here. We'll acknowledge the principle of rotation. The reciprocation then is Fine Gael say, okay, well, we do accept there's not complete parity of esteem. We'll do it pro rata, but there's parity of principle, which is that it will rotate and you're entitled to the top job. And that'll actually suit probably the succession for Fianna Fáil with Jack Chambers down the road. But where it's really interesting is this. This is in 2 parts. So my focus is entirely on Wednesday, the 18th of December, because that is when the Dáil resumes. So there's a whole set of things that are just to do with Parliament. In other words, that if you want to have an entitlement, irrespective of government this is, if you want to have entitled to priority questions, so there's only 5, you do get one of those, which is a good soundbite opportunity with the minister, because priority questions are do you get private members' time to have a motion? Do you get representation on the committees? So the Regional Independence Group have added, so they lost 2, Cathal Berry and Matt Shanahan. And basically all the usual suspects are still there. Lowry, Michael Lowry, Sean Kenny, Noel Grealish and Verona are the key people. Very cleverly, Finian McGrath has got in Barry Heenahan into the group.
Well, I should say, on Sunday when we were doing our subscriber podcast, we didn't think was going to win the seat.
But he did.
He did. There was a few people even after we did them on Sunday who came from well behind and leapt forward.
Did you notice both from the Olympia and Cork people that you'd never heard of? Liam Quaid, Eugene Kenny, Barry Heenahan. Who's he talking about? Shane Moynihan,
Absolutely.
Ken O'Flynn. They all sailed into the... And that was back in mid-September. But anyway, I'll blow my own trumpet later. But
I think you've just done it. Go on anyway.
So the 18th of December. So... first of all, the regional independents are actually form a group of 8, but that does not mean all 8 will be signed up to the government deal. For example, previously in that group, Peadar Tóibín of Aontú, who has only 2, he'll probably join the regional independence group as well. So it's just a flag of convenience to facilitate parliamentary rights.
Does it give them funding rights as well?
But no, I think their funding rights, I actually don't know that in terms of parliamentary assistance. I think that's more election related.
Okay, so there's a few things come up out of that, and I want to get back to the dynamic between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in a moment, but they are 2 seats short of a majority, and they would be 3 seats short if they decide to nominate their own Ceann Comhairle. So that's the first thing that happens on the 18th.
The very first.
So who gets that?
So wait till I tell you. There is fury in Fianna Fáil. There is fury in Fianna Fáil at the position of Ceann Comhairle. Right? Let me just bear with me on this. So first of all, he's got 2 terms as Ceann Comhairle. Happy days, and he announces before the election that he's stepping back. He is now running a campaign to get back in again. The Fianna Fáilers are saying, number 1, John McGuinness, who's never got nothing really except chairman of the PAC from Kilkenny and got 3 seats in. Brendan Smith, who's been a loyal soldier, and a few others, Pat the Cope Gallagher and so on, would be entitled if Fianna Fáil is to get it. But there is double fury. On both the 2016 election, 2020 election and the 2024 election, in South Kildare, that was a 4-seater. He took the Ceann Comhairle, but Fianna Fáil would have reasonable expectations of getting 1 out of 3. Fiona O'Loughlin, the senator, was their candidate. She got 17.9% of the vote, and she was pipped by about 400 votes by Mark Wall to the last seat. And when you dig into it, because they're going to do a report card later on all the parties, you find what went wrong there, because Fiona's been working hard. She's in the big population base of Newbridge and all the rest of it. You find, well, actually in the last election, Farrell and Fiona have never got on. That Susan Doyle was his pony in the race. And they said, this time we'll run one and get it right.
Suzanne Doyle.
So now you have a situation that the councillors who are close to Farrell will just say, we're just there for the photo ops and not there for the dog-hard canvassing. And, to be so close and miss, the machine was not functioning. Next door in Kildare North, Fianna Fáil got 2 seats, and to get no seat was simply incredible. And to be honest with you, let me put a tooth in it, they're blaming O'Farrell. And they kind of feel he has a nerve to even be looking for it. On both, you've had a good innings, right? And secondly, the local Fianna Fáil thing. So that's what they're saying. I'm not saying anything. But I want to tell you who I think is going to be Ceann Comhairle, and no one has mentioned it. Verona Murphy as Ceann Comhairle. So first of all, she is regarded within the independent group as an able person. She's not aging. She's in her prime. There has never been a female Ceann Comhairle. It saves the point you made of not using up one of the Fine Gael Fianna Fáil numbers. And also, there is an added bonus for Wexford, for Fine Gael. She, like Lowry and North Tipperary...
She's the Fine Gael TD.
She's cannibalised that as an independent, and she's not going back to the party. By getting her off of the pitch, if Wexford went to a 3-seater instead of a 4-seater, they would have a real chance of getting her votes back for Fine Gael and getting a new TD in. So...
Do you think she wants it?
Put it like this, yeah.
Right, okay. So that means, let's take it, okay, that's the Ivan punt. It's going to be Verona Murphy as Ceann Comhairle, which saves it. So how many independents do Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael really need to support the government? Because like you, I just don't believe they're interested in Labour. They're not interested in the Soc Dems. They feel that they would be harder to deal with possibly than the Greens were, because they would be determined not to suffer the same fate as the Greens. Now, the flip side of that is that apparently some Fianna Fáil TDs in particular constituencies are worried that these independents would claim the credit for everything that goes to those constituencies. So if Sean Canny or Michael Lowry get something, that they would be announcing it ahead of the Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael TDs. But look, them's the breaks, I suppose. And it's
if
only
they stand in the next election. Lowry's in his 70s.
He's 70 now.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be, like, let's say this runs to 2029. And the end of 2029, I don't think there are conceivable circumstances.
But does he not want his son to replace him?
No, but the point about it is, look, in the broader scheme of things, what they're looking for is one senior cabinet position, 2 or 3 junior ministers, and 3 committee chairs. That's what they're looking for. And so, on the reciprocation principle, you win some, you lose some.
They won't get a senior ministry.
Put it like this. They're certainly asking for it. They're certain. They might
get a super junior with rights to be at the table.
Yeah, well, put it like this. Let the balls land wherever they do. There'll be lots of horse trading. I would expect between the 18th of December and the 10th of January, all of the horse trading. And it's starting this weekend in Edinburgh between Simon and Micheál. And someone sent me a text in Fianna Fáil. We're just looking up the definition of parity of esteem here, what exactly it means.
Well, it's a phrase from the peace process in the 1990s
exactly.
For the Unionists and the Republicans.
So therefore, look, there's
how many do they need? Do we have a working majority? Bertie Ahern said 94, and which is why he was suggesting Labour or the Soc Dems. But I would suggest that there's more than enough independents who would be motivated to support the government and to not, as you said in the subscriber edition last week, to not collapse the government to cause an early general election.
Yeah, I'd say 92 would be enough, because there is every possibility, if you listen carefully to the Healy race, that after the government is established, down the road, and 3 years is a long time for Micheál to be Taoiseach and so on, that if there's a rock on the road, you could easily have a situation that they could do a side deal with an independent, which would be signed in blood, insofar as that if you get this bypass, if you get this extension to the Munster TU, Technical University, if you get this housing, affordable housing scheme going or whatever. So I think there'll be independents. There's a total of 20 independents in play. And even Paul Gogarty or Gillian Toole or any of these, I could see the possibility. So I would say in the short term, 6 is the answer.
Isn't it in gas is one way of describing it, how Michael Lowry has managed to have such an outside influence on governments since the time that he was sacked in disgrace in 1996. Oh, I know he resigned technically, but let's face it, he had the gun put to his head.
You never let it go, do you?
I have a minute or two in this, believe me, right?
Let me not interrupt you.
So basically, he's thrown out of the government in which you were part of in 1996 because Ben Dunn had secretly paid for the massive extension to his mansion down in Tipperary. And yet he has remained in the middle of things, so that when Bertie Ahern was running a minority government, Jackie Healy-Rae was the figure that everyone focused on. But Jackie Healy-Rae used to meet regularly with Michael Lowry to actually decide on how they were going to handle all of these things. They used to meet in a pub down in Killarney. You've got to meet halfway. So that was Michael Lowry in that. And then Micheál Martin, I saw this on the week, a fella I know put this up on social media who would have a vested interest, but still a relevant point.
Everyone has a vested interest.
Yeah, okay, but it's still a relevant point. When the Moriarty Tribunal report came out 13 years ago, Micheál Martin stood up in the Dáil, and not only did he condemn Michael Lowry because it had found that he had engaged in corrupt acts in the awarding of the mobile phone licence, he demanded that he resign from Dáil Éireann, that he was not an appropriate person.
Micheál did.
Micheál did. Yeah. And look, now you are 13 years later, and there he is talking to Micheál Martin about coming in to support a government. I suppose pragmatism dictates everything.
Well, no, my father.
Three elections since he demanded he resign from the Dáil. The people of Tipperary, now it's Tipperary North because the constituency is broken again, have returned Michael Lowry to his role of kingmaker. And despite the fact that he was roundly condemned by Micheál Martin as an unfit to be in Dáil Éireann, they should resign, he's now letting him be significant to formation of government.
In fairness to you, Matt, whether it's different characters we've spoken about in business or in politics over the years, you are absolutely consistent with this kind of ethical, moral virtue signalling that you go on with. And you know,
said it was pragmatism,
I just draw breath each time because I'm used to it now, and I don't let it rise me. Let me say this first of all. My father had a saying: "It's a long lane, has no turns," and so therefore, you know, you're up today, you're down tomorrow, so you've got to have a bit of give and take in life. Ducks don't swim in straight lines. That's my philosophy, and I just don't like being preachy about it, but never held you back before. But anyway, the point about it is this. Okay, I'll concede the Moriarty thing to you, but I will just say to you that in relation to Ben Dunn, because I was involved in the McCracken Tribunal, I got a donation of 10 grand from in cash, which I declared and all the rest of it in a particular election. And Michael was, just to say this, he had a different relationship with Ben Dunn, which was to provide refrigeration services to every supermarket he had. So the financial arrangements between Dunn and Lowry were not all political. That's the only point I make about that. But you're absolutely right about this, that he has been appointed as the coordinator and spokesperson. Here's a bit of a row between him and Canny about this and that, but Lowry isn't looking for, ostensibly isn't looking for anything, and certainly not looking for a job for himself. But do remember this: if your memory was good enough into the dark crevices of disapproval that you would have, Phil Hogan and Michael Lowry are still, you know, John Bruton and Lowry said they were best friends forever. The best friends forever are Phil Hogan.
You were the third musketeer of that
well,
group,
like
weren't
this,
you?
I always move in and out of circles, because they wouldn't approve of me being close to you. So the point is this: that
you're a Venn diagram person.
So therefore, even though Fianna Fáil's in the lead position, the relationship between Harris and Hogan is such that actually he's in the perfect position to even square problems between the parties. Yeah. And he is a very adept commercial negotiator, and he's as cute as a shithouse rat. And you know what I mean, insofar as there's nothing Lowry doesn't know, and like his right hand doesn't know what his left hand is doing. So he is the communicator on behalf of the regional independents. And you know what, there'll be so many different agendas there, I couldn't even get across them. But put it like this: he is a deal maker, and it tells me a deal will be done.
Okay, we need to take a break. I could start going out about Joe Biden pardoning his son Hunter if you really want me to get on the ethical and moral high horse, but we might leave that one go for the subscriber edition. If you want more, pathtopowerpodcast.com is where you can get that. But we have more in this edition of Path to Power after this quick break. Welcome back. Let's continue talking, Ivan, about the formation of government. And some people are saying, what's all this stuff about needing to wait until January? They've been in power together. They've gotten rid of the Greens. They need to take in the independents. It's going to be more of the same. What's all this foostering about in relation to a programme for government? However, I would argue to that is that maybe there is a bit of time actually required to work out what things need to be done differently. Although I suspect the real issue is jockeying for position in relation to what departments are given in the divvy out, because it does appear that having made such a big issue of crime and justice before the election, Fianna Fáil really want to get that back out of Helen McEntee's hands. If they do, what are they going to have to concede? So this is actually, so the first dynamic is the Indos and who's in and who's out and what they'll get at the end of the day. But the point about this, in terms of committee chairs, which is pensionable, in terms of Senate appointments, in terms of so much largesse, I think a deal is doable. Very interesting, the appointment to the negotiating teams. Now, do bear in mind that in 2020, almost the lead negotiator for Fianna Fáil was Derek Cleary, and he was only offered at the last minute chief whip, and he nearly didn't take it, you know what I mean? So it doesn't confer this. A lot of eyebrows raised in relation to Harris's appointment. No Peter Burke, no Neil Richmond, who I would consider to be the two closest to him. So what's he at there? So Helen sorry, others. Hildegard Naughton wasn't involved either in the and there was one other, Patrick O'Donovan.
Yeah.
Patrick O'Donovan is starting to make himself available post-election to the media for interview. I wonder, is Patrick O'Donovan worried that he's about to be dropped from the cabinet? Well, and he's trying to get himself out into the public
The main
eye.
reason he got appointed was that they ended up, after Coveney was out, with no Munster cabinet member, which was unthinkable especially with Micheál being from Munster and so strong in Munster. So that's how he got in on that time.
Do they have a replacement?
No, we'll put it like this. So very interesting to see. Jennifer is in.
Jennifer Carroll McNeill.
Yeah,
she will get promoted to the cabinet.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Well, first of all,
Fine Gael will have more. They need another woman to replace Heather Humphreys, and they will have at least one more cabinet position, probably two.
Well, I would say that the people who are really close to Harris, in terms of they care more about Harris than they do about Fine Gael, they would be really loyal to him, would be saying, the one person you need to keep an eye on is Jennifer McNeill, because she is out to take your job. And, let not ambition mock your graceful toil, but that's the intent there. So, so he'll be keeping a very close eye on her.
Why not put her into the Department of Health? Now, you could say the Department of Health is Health, although, in this century alone, 4 former Minister for Health have gone on to become party leaders, and Taoiseach Micheál Martin, Brian Cowan, Leo Varadkar, Simon Harris.
And the Angola principle.
Yes, it doesn't actually work like that. It's not actually damaging to your political prospects. But, given that, we will talk about Stephen Donnelly in a minute, but say maybe if Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil were taking over justice, would they hand health over to Fine Gael? And then would they put Jennifer Carroll McNeill in? Would she be the person that you need a strong personality maybe to deal with Robert Watt, for example?
Yeah. Put it like this. The level of preferment for Jennifer will be limited. And the appointment will be done on the basis of either you say because it's Angola or to keep a very close eye on her. Because if Harris hits a rock on the road, that's where trouble will start for him internally. So the most interesting so John Cummins and John Paul O'Shea.
First-time TDs.
Yeah, well, he was a senator, John Cummins, but put it like this, does it mean they're going to get junior ministries? I don't know, because that it doesn't necessarily follow. Martin Hayden, I think, will be the next Minister for Agriculture. I think that Fine Gael want agriculture back. Leo didn't really care about farmers. Harris is very concerned about it. He knows it's the backbone in rural Ireland. So I think that is definite move there. On the Fianna Fáil side, very interesting. So the main man is Jack Chambers, no question.
Who's now primed to take over in September 2027 to go into the next election as leader of Fianna Fáil.
Absolutely.
Now, we assume Micheál Martin will, then at the age of 67, by that stage, having been leader of Fianna Fáil, it will
Since
be close
11.
to 18 years.
Yeah.
18 years. Even he can't go on forever.
Well, you can never rule anything out with that man, but I agree with you. So, James Lawless, write it down, got the extra seat, Kildare North, Nisho Carroll in. He is likely to be Minister for Transport and Energy. James Brown, who did a lot of work in the manifesto and was used quite a bit on television before, during and after the election, from Wexford. Mary Butler. These are all on the team. They're on the negotiating.
I'm glad you found a woman there, because wasn't it very noticeable, the picture during the week, the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party, all, was it 48 of them, 7 women amongst the 48?
So Mary Butler and Norma Foley are both on the team. So, I mean, I think that's, put it like, it is what it is. So, but we'll have a future episode to go to who'll get what. But put it like this, you are absolutely right. The level of jockeying for position for every job is simply incredible.
Sorry, can I just throw another one? And I know this won't happen because he would burn up too much political capital. But somebody did suggest during the week, Stephen Donnelly, put him in the Senate, make him a Taoiseach nominee as a senator, and keep him in the Department of Health on the basis that I know.
You're losing it.
I'm not saying I agree with this, but that Micheál seems so wedded to him that he might actually be interested in that.
Do you think he's wedded to him?
I don't.
No, the situation is...
I think Stephen Donnelly's day is done.
Stephen Donnelly has allowed the... Fianna Fáil organisation in the Wicklow constituency to become comatose, and he must take responsibility for that. He's been given every support, every free run at a convention, every preferment to go straight into cabinet. He put it like this: nobody has received as much and given as little back to a party as Stephen Donnelly. But can I just...
No, sorry, there's an interesting point. I just want to finish out on this.
There is a departmental issue I want to raise.
Yeah, but let's just talk about the Stephen Donnelly thing. I mean, does this sort of show that if you have a big job in government, that it's almost too much to expect somebody to do that job and also run a full-time constituency organisation, that we need some sort of system like they have in continental Europe, where you put somebody in to run the constituency on your behalf. But then does it come to that you have another problem? Because could it be that Anne Rabbitte lost her seat because while she was concentrating on her role in the Department of Health, young Albert Dolan, down 26-year-old, took advantage of her absences to create his own little mini empire down there in Galway, and he gets elected effectively at her expense.
The truth is, if you go back to Dick Spring in Kerry, but if you go to the modern day of Charlie McConalogue in Donegal and Norma Foley, the actual travel time to the constituency is so onerous, overnights and all of that. So the normal routine is TDs come up on a Tuesday, go home on a Thursday night, ministers come up on a Monday, early meeting, cabinet Tuesday morning, and they go home on a Friday. The fact of the matter is, he was only half an hour down the road in Wicklow. Do you know what I mean? Like, why did he close his constituency office? Give me a break. I mean, these people are working their nuts out. We know the difficulties of the system, but the point I wanted to make was this.
Go back to your departmental shake-up.
Yes, this is really key. If you go through the Fianna Fáil manifesto, an absolute anchor was, we're going to reshape our whole migration system. The Department of Children, which has gone from 1.6 billion to 8 billion dealing with accommodation for migrants, was never in a position to deal with it. Either way, the Bureau, of Immigration is under the Department of Justice. So the Fianna Fáil idea is to set up a Department of Home Affairs, Domestic Affairs, and a bit like Finance and Public Expenditure, to set up two ministries. So Justice will deal with police, courts and prisons, and the rest of the border security and intelligence and migration will all be dealt with the Department of Justice. So there's going to be two ministers for justice. Fianna Fáil will get one of them.
Okay, but what then gives? And you see, this is a problem. I see that you could say maybe the vulnerable one would be the Department of Higher and Further Education. You could put all education back together again, even though there are very good reasons for separating out further and higher education. But this brings up a problem that we have so many unwieldy departments. And
Eamon Ryan's was crazy.
Roger O'Gorman's was crazy. But I suppose the point is that I'm making now is that the state has become so much bigger. We have a much bigger population. We have a much bigger infrastructure to actually deal with. Are 15 cabinet ministers enough? That's what we're restrained to in a constitution that was set up for 3 million people rather than the 6 to 7 million people that we're going to have very, very soon. So could it be that we need to change the constitution to allow to have more ministers and departments? Or could it be that even if we have that need, no government would be brave enough to bring it in because they would be afraid of being rejected in a constitutional referendum by people saying they're only trying to create more jobs for the boys, even if it is necessary to have more demarcation of departments?
Well, I don't want to be too insulting, but there's quite a few departments or non-departments. Rural Affairs, Gaeltech, Defence could be put into some of these ones. I mean, like, the fact of the matter is...
So Defence doesn't have a full ministry at the moment.
Exactly, it shouldn't. The point is this, it's with Foreign Affairs. Like, the point is this, there's lots of departments, but I do think transport and energy should be taken away, and I think environment should go into the Custom House. And also, the big question for me, will Harris go into housing? Because if he really wants to solve the housing problem, if he really wants to give it the prioritisation, he's probably going to swan off to Foreign Affairs because that'd suit Chris Donoghue. But the fact of the matter is...
What a gratuitous attack on your good friend Chris Donoghue.
No, I'm just saying, like, the national interest is always...
No, I'll tell you why I think he'll want Foreign Affairs. I think it makes sense for Harris to have Foreign Affairs. One is that there's an EU presidency coming up and that'll allow him to appear very distinguished as Minister for Foreign Affairs.
And you don't get into scrapes.
Yeah, exactly. And it allows him the time to work on party issues and stuff. But I do think it's going to be a very interesting period for Simon Harris the next 2 to 3 years. And he campaigned essentially on the basis, let me be Taoiseach again. I've only been Taoiseach for 7 months. Yeah. I deserve more time. I want more time to do this job. And he kept emphasising how different it was to being Taoiseach, to being a line minister, that the buck stopped with him and that he could kick ass and get things done. I think his ego is going to find it very difficult to cope with not being the main man now that he's had a taste of it. And how he behaves himself as a number 2 to the Taoiseach over the next near to 3 years is going to be fascinating.
But let's be clear. this government's success or failure in 5 years' time will pivot on, did they build 300,000 houses or not? And if Micheál and Simon don't get that, they're in deep, deep doo-doo. Insofar as that is all that matters. What the people want is just the bricks and mortar delivered. Whether that's planning, as we talk about, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's actually the capacity of the industry. The fact of the matter is, you cannot forget now that the election is over, if there was one message, that was the Achilles heel. They will put up with a lot of things, cost of living and so on, but they will not put up with a generation that are excluded from housing. Can we do a report card on the election? Because I've done some work on this.
I know that. Well, I want to ask you one more thing before we take a break, before you get to your report card. What about Micheál Martin's refusal to talk to Sinn Féin about the possibility of coalition? Given that Sinn Féin has one seat more than Fine Gael, it's as obvious from a numerical point of view that they could be talking. And as you always say, it's the maths that do the thing. Now, there is some commentary to this where personally, I think it's ridiculous, and for a couple of reasons. One is that an awful lot of Fianna Fáil voters would be outraged if they thought, having ruled it out so firmly beforehand and making it clear that Fine Gael was the preferred partner, if he was now to talk to Sinn Féin. Similarly, I think a lot of Fine Gael people who gave their second or third preferences to Fianna Fáil would be similarly outraged. The expectation was that was the preferred combination. There's also the issue in relation to personalities, that Micheál Martin just simply would not get on with Mary Lou McDonald and would not be prepared to see Mary Lou McDonald go into the next election as Taoiseach. So there's no point for Fianna Fáil in doing a deal with Sinn Féin which would elevate Sinn Féin in that regard. And then even just on a more practical level, and you talked about the importance of housing, given the differences between Fianna Fáil's approach and Sinn Féin's approach, I don't see how, in coming together in a coalition, they would be able to marry those. They are just so diametrically opposed. It would have to be one or the other. And I just cannot see Fianna Fáil giving way to letting Owen O'Brien have free rein at housing. And then, on the other hand, I can't see Sinn Féin, well, maybe they would ditch their principles on Owen O'Brien just to get into government. That'd be more likely that they would agree to it. But look, the reality is, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin is not happening. So I don't know why some people are saying it. And I don't know why Mary Lou McDonald says she wants to talk to Micheál Martin. About what?
Replacing 100 years. I mean, all that narrative was polarised. I mean, I just don't think it's even worth talking about insofar as A, the arithmetic is not required, B, that arithmetic was there in the last Dáil where they got 37 and 38 respectively. So the fact of the matter is that we have more important things to talk about.
And we'll do that when we come back after the break. Welcome back to the third part of this edition of Path to Power post-election as the dust settles. So you want to do report cards on all the particular parties. Yeah. And I suppose you're going to start, are you, with Fianna Fáil, who, I mean, it's all relative given that, 22% of the first preference vote. But the key thing is 48 seats. So winner all right?
Well, first of all, so as you know, from Carlow Kilkenny, finishing up in Wicklow, Wexford, I went through the results versus the predictions, the dynamics and so on, and I came to a couple of conclusions in no particular. We'll start with Fianna Fáil then. First of all, real recovery in Dublin. Shane Moynihan in Midwest, Shay Brennan knocking on the door, Catherine Arda actually got the first seat in Dublin South Central. You must remember that when they got wiped out in 2011, they ended up with actually no seat in Dublin after Brian Lenihan died. Their worst trouble was with middle-class Dublin. There are green shoots for Fianna Fáil there, and Jack Chambers, if they have a Dublin leader, I think that is the best feature of the Fianna Fáil report card. There was a couple of clear misses. One was Kildare South. Another was Mayo. Like, there's two things I did not spot at all. Hand up. Owen Hayes in Dublin Bay South, was Hazel Chu versus, we knew Chris Andrews wasn't safe. I just did not see Owen Hayes. And the other one, even speaking a couple of times to Padder, I never saw Paul Lahollis Sylvain too coming through the miracle of knock.
To be honest, even in the subscription edition we recorded at 1:30 last Sunday, you still hadn't seen that one.
No, and so on. So why did Lisa Chambers not get elected? And I always find when I when I text a few people and say, what really happened there, because your brand was strong enough. If you didn't get elected on this occasion, it was your fault, not the brand's fault. And there are times the tide goes out on the brand. Someone said, well, Ivan, I don't think it helped that she closed her constituency office in Castlebar in February 2020 and only reopened it in September. I rest my case. You know what I mean? There is always something there. And, you know, I said this about the council elections. If you are doing, people wondering about knocking doors and is it a waste of time. The time to knock doors is every Friday in the constituency when there's no election on. That's what the Healy Rays do. They provide a 24/7 care service for the constituents. So those who haven't done the work, those who don't have the organisation, they have only themselves to blame.
Okay, well, I'll give you a couple of things in relation to that. I wonder, I mean, you know, I was making jokes at Lisa Chambers' expense back around the time of the European Parliament elections, where she also failed to get elected on the basis that it would be a bit like what she did in the referendum. Remember when she said she was going to vote one way and then afterwards said she'd voted the other?
And here was I thinking I was cruel. Go on.
Yeah, but I think that resonated with people. But I will say, I mean, it is difficult. She's a young mother. It's very difficult when you're a young mother who's away up in the Dáil or in the Shannon and doing stuff and trying to be out knocking on doors on Friday at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and people using their Ring doorbells that you've come to understand not to be actually opening door to the politicians on the thing. I mean, she has her own family responsibilities. And this is the thing that also was very interesting, I thought, was that despite the 40% requirement for the parties to have female candidates, how few women have actually been returned compared to that. I mean, my own home city of Cork North Central, Cork South Central, 10 TDs, all men. Mm-hmm. Women are on the ballot paper and people aren't electing them. Why not?
So, moving on to Fine Gael.
I noticed you didn't answer my question.
Well, no, I mean, like, the people have spoken. You know what I mean? You can say the bastards, you can say they're not gender balanced, but what I'm saying is that, like, what more do you want? You put the option in front of them and they don't go for it.
But does that suggest, I mean, if you took your example of the Healy Rays, I mean, like, they're extraordinary, the amount of work they do going around door to door, clinic to clinic, pub to pub, that actually perhaps men spend more time doing that than women. Because
politics is all consuming. It's not a job. It's 24/7. It's part of your DNA. And if you want to say, but I want to play golf, but I have parenting commitments, politics isn't like that.
I know it's how you put golf ahead of parenting commitments.
No, sorry. The point I'm trying to make is politics, and everyone in politics needs to be aware of this. If you let it, politics will suck you in, chew you up, and spit you out, and say thanks very much. Here's a kick in the arse for thanks.
Okay.
And like so, but like, can I go
finish your Fianna Fáil report?
Okay,
card,
well, so Fianna Fáil, put it like this: they need to make some tough Senate decisions, like Lorraine Clifford Lee, Mary Fitzpatrick, some of these.
They need to deem unelectable, that it's just never going to happen for them.
Exactly. In other words, they need to be picking potential people who are strong councillors who can win seats for them in the next election.
Thank you for your service, but goodbye.
And in the picking of the Senate Shannon election. Now,
that's very cruel, though, isn't it? You just have to be ruthless like that.
This is business. Okay.
Could Lorraine Clifford Lee not remain a very effective senator?
Yeah, but she isn't an electable TD. It's nothing personal. It's just business. Okay? So, Fine Gael. So, great performance. Waterford, John Cummins, John Clendenin in Offaly. A stupendous performance by Michael Carrigy in Longford. Wicklow, unbelievable second seat. Rathdown Leary both delivered the second seat. And then we get to the disasters. Cork Southwest, you know what I mean? Just 11,125 votes.
But they were up against two party leaders in Holly Kearns and Michael Collins in a three-seater.
They were looking to dislodge Christy O'Sullivan. They didn't succeed. They ran a two-candidate strategy. You know, this is Collins country. This is the bluest rural area in the country. Bad report card there. Kerry, sorry. Wrong candidate. You didn't get the councillors on board.
It just shows having an All-Ireland medal in Kerry does not guarantee you a seat.
Meath West, despite the best efforts of Damien English, Damien should have stood. He was Director of Elections there. Bad report card there. Roscommon, Galway, it was unfortunate with John Naughton, but again, no cigar. Wexford, the first time since 1927, there's no seat there. Donegal, calamity. And in regard to Fianna Fáil, the performance in Carlow Kilkenny was truly exceptional. To get 3 seats there, to get 2 on 1.4 quotas, to get 2 in Donegal was absolutely exceptional.
By Fianna Fáil.
And Cork Northwest, yes, all those for Fianna Fáil. So basically, I've seen analysis of, 1.4% quotas, 0.6 of a quota. Who got the biggest seat bonus? That was Fianna Fáil. They did better on transfers. They had a better ground war. Now, other than the main parties...
Sorry, no, before you get to the other parties, I want to bring up 1 or 2 things in relation to Fine Gael. I was very taken. I mean, basically, the opinion polls at the start of the campaign, when it was finally officially called, had Fine Gael at around 25-26%, and the Harris hop ran out of energy and literally crashed back.
In fairness,
down.
we never bought into that.
Never bought into it. But he didn't have a great campaign, Simon Harris. And I thought what was also fascinating was in the last week, Paschal Donohoe was pushed out front and centre by Fine Gael almost on a daily basis to talk about the economy, but also to talk like he was sort of like the adult in the room. And if you remember back to when Simon Harris took over from Leo Varadkar, and he delivered an ultimatum, remember, to people. If you want to stay in cabinet, you have to commit to running in the general election, which is why Ceann Comhairle resigned his ministerial position and said he wasn't standing in the general election. And there was a lot of speculation at the time around Paschal Donohoe as to whether he would hang on. There was the talk, there had been talk in Washington, which didn't happen, but talk about the potential maybe for other jobs, given that he's such a big wig in European political financial circles. And Paschal Donohoe recommitted. We wondered, was it reluctant? Because, the word around town is that Paschal Donohoe wouldn't be as much of a fan of Simon Harris as he had been of Leo Varadkar and of Enda Kenny beforehand.
Or as close, yeah.
Or definitely not as close. But in the last couple of weeks, the posters did go up, a 3-person poster for Fine Gael all around the country. It wasn't just Simon Harris, it was Paschal Donohoe and Helen McEntee on it as well as the deputy leader. And I suppose Paschal Donohoe was there to sort of show the middle-aged gravitas and the sort of continuity and thing. But I would suspect now, even given the role that he's been given, albeit Helen McEntee is nominally leading the negotiations for formation of government, given that she's deputy leader, I suspect Simon Harris is now going to have to give Paschal Donohoe much more responsibility in the future administration. And I suspect as well that particularly if Fianna Fáil have the Taoiseach for the first 3 years, it means Paschal Donohoe will be going back into the Department of Finance. I don't see how Simon Harris could actually overlook him and put anyone back in there instead of him. Or could you?
Well, first of all, I've heard bits in the media and some within Fine Gael have been sort of grumbling about Harris, that he was exposed and so on. And, he did make mistakes. This is the worst type of horseshit that I've heard in a long time. First of all, he took over the party at a time when there wasn't a queue of people to take over the party. And now he brought a lot of this on himself. He centralised the manifesto, the selection conventions through Alwyn Enright, all into the DOT, the Department of the Taoiseach. He has defied political gravity, which is Bertie, Blair, Thatcher, you don't get a 4th term. He has brought the party from facing extermination of 20 seats with the 18 retirements to 38 seats. He has saved Fine Gael from a near-death experience whereby the option they would be faced with now is to be cannibalised by Fianna Fáil as a junior partner, the way the PDs, Labour and so on have had over the Greens now over the years. Anyone who actually doesn't realise, whatever the branding about new energy, both intellectually, resilience-wise and so on, he actually has done an enormous job for the party. And if he never does another thing, he has actually procured something that was, like I said all along, what he's received here is a hospital pass. He turned a hospital pass into a decent result. The mistake he made was raising expectations that he could get 50 seats, and now he's been hoisted on his own petard. But I think he will learn from some of the mistakes he made. He will slow down a bit, and he will make the difference between information and knowledge is having made mistakes, you won't make the same mistake again.
Have you been talking to Phil Hogan again?
No. In fact, Phil Hogan and I have nearly fallen out over this election because he believes that the media treated, and he thinks I'm in the media, which is such an outrageous slur.
I know you're in denial.
Not a slur.
You're in denial. You have been working
I'm an
in
entertainer,
the media.
number one. Number two, an analyst. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I am not a journalist.
You're out of politics since 2002. So you have been working in radio and in television and in podcasting. It means you are part of the media.
No.
Do not try and deny yourself, Ivan.
No. I do a lot of things, and I'm a bit of a comedian, but I am not a journalist. Please. That is a low blow, which I actually take personally and resent, to be honest with you. So they feel, in the sort of Phil Hogan circle, in my opinion, that the media were out to get Harris. They applied a different standard to him, in terms of Mary Lou having detail. So I'm not justifying this. In fact, I'm actually thinking...
Every party thinks that.
Fair point. You're dead right about that.
I mean, like Sinn Féin...
The persecution complex.
You can be damn sure that Sinn Féin are muttering about various journalists and various broadcasters, not giving them a fair shake, particularly around the time when they had all the Neil O'Donnell scandal and the Brian Stanley stuff and all of that. You could be damn... There isn't hardly a journalist or broadcaster, I'd imagine, that Sinn Féin thinks they got a fair break from. And Fine Gael, and it goes back to Fianna Fáil over the years. I mean, like Fianna Fáil would nearly have had it back around the time of the crash, that the crash wasn't their responsibility. It was all about the media talking the country down.
Correct. Yeah, they all have a persecution complex, and they should get over it. Sinn Féin, let's talk about that. Yeah. Sinn Féin. So it looks like they went in with 37 seats. They came out with 39 seats. And if you allow inflation of 14 TD larger Dáil, it doesn't look great. But actually, they've made a lot of progress. They got rid of a lot of the deadwood, South Kildare, Clare, and they've viable working people to get in. They made a huge breakthrough across the country. Galway East was a significant win for a young TD, Lewis O'Hara, who won't be dislodged. To get the second seat in Waterford was a huge achievement. They consolidated, but not only that, they've pulled off a succession act. You look at Crow in Southwest. They have Niamh Whelan as PA in position. They have Maria McCormick, who got 245 votes in Laois. She's ready to take that seat with 5,500 votes next time. So they have actually moved a lot of the jigsaw pieces to be really on course to get 50 seats next time, just on the basis of the ground war.
Okay, I give you all of that, and I understand where you're coming from. But I suspect that some of the leading lights in Sinn Féin are likely to go mad over the next 5 years with the frustration of being kept out of power. This is a party that a year and a half ago was planning for government. And as I said previously to you, I mean, you have to take your hat off to the likes of David Cullinane, Eoin O'Brien. They put in the work. Yeah. They put in the hard yards to be prepared. Pierce Doherty heading off with Davy over to London to meet institutional investors. They have been preparing themselves. I suspect, and Mary Lou McDonald was preparing herself to be potentially Taoiseach. At the moment, they're on a little bit of a sugar rush for those figures that you've explained, and they're saying, God, look, we faced oblivion after the local and European elections. Well, not oblivion, but they faced being in a really bad place. And they recovered and they came back, and they're there or thereabouts with where they were in relation to seats from 5 years ago, although they're down significantly in first preference votes, and that's important. When are they ever going? If this wasn't their time, when is going to be their time? For all the times we used to speak about Labour and you'd say, will we get the Gilmore Gael back in 2011? And there was talk of Gilmore for Taoiseach, and it flopped completely, and Gilmore was gone 3 years later, even though he was a minister and gone as leader of the Labour Party. These senior people in Sinn Féin are going to be so frustrated. And you know what? They're going to be, they feel they have a mandate to oppose, and they have a mandate to oppose. But I think they're going to have to really look at the way they go about. Is there a large portion of the electorate who don't like shouty Sinn Féin, who feel that it's all negative, that they perhaps overdo a lot of the negatives. And I'm not denying that there are faults and problems in the country, and there are things that need to be solved and things that the outgoing government failed very badly in solving. But the Sinn Féin, I just think that a lot of them are going to go nuts. And then you wonder, will Mary Lou McDonald have the appetite to lead the party for another 5 years in opposition?
So, can I just finish out the ground road? Cork North Central, Thomas Gould to be retiring. I hear the wife will get the seat there the next time. And
he's not old enough to retire. Thomas Gould is younger than me.
Okay. Then Dublin Northwest, Desi Ellis will have to retire. Carney Bood will move in that position. So beneath, in the undergrowth of the ground game, there are real positive signs for Sinn Féin. Look, absolutely, Mary Harney's old phrase, the worst day in government is better than the best day in opposition. I get that in terms of meaningful thing. But I can remember when Ciallain O'Callaghan was the sole Sinn Féin TD in the Dáil. You got to, like, Rome wasn't built in a day if you want to be...
It's a long game. Chuckagar law.
Exactly.
It means comes a long time coming. But if you think of it, what Mary Lou McDonald wanted, and I think she saw as her political ambition, was to get into government this time and to then push for a border poll before the end of the decade. And that's one of the consequences of Sinn Féin not getting into power. I think the chances of a border poll this decade have receded dramatically as a result of this general election outcome in the Republic in 2024.
Fair point. Another person who did very badly is People Before Profit. Gino lost out.
McBarry lost.
McBarry. Hazel didn't pull off the succession thing with Breed. And Conor Reddy, which was a big hope for them in Northwest, didn't make it. And, you know, you look at the first preference vote for Richard Boyd Barrett and for Paul Murphy. Paul Murphy, who I thought would be sailing in, depended on 2,000 transfers for Sinn Féin. The entire brand of People Before Profit desperately needs to merge into something because it didn't. Can I just make one point? Because a lot of talk in the media, you know, the way I've had to listen to claptrap about Soc Dems and Labour being in government. I've had to listen to a lot of claptrap about the turnout being 59% and how democracy is imperiled and all this. Hold on a second. The Register.
It's a disgrace.
The Register is a disgrace. I was speaking to John Laharche and he said there was a time with the 3 local authorities in Dublin that they would actually have an assigned staff and they would actually go door to door and check the Register. Now it's all done digitally. Yes, they're very good in the Electoral Commission. Register to vote, you can only takes a minute online. But what about the people who need to be taken off the register because they've moved address and they're still on the old place? The number of people who got double polling cards, I'd say
4 times.
Yeah, I'd say the turnout was about 65% of actual voters. But look, like the Electoral Commission has 2 jobs to do. One, sort out. Stop the airy-fairy stuff.
That's not its job. I spoke to Art O'Leary about this week in detail, right?
Someone else's job, is it?
Well, no, it's all the local councils. In fact, the argument is take it away from the local councils. Make it use PPS numbers.
Yeah.
Use the Revenue Commissioners if need be. And let's get an accurate register.
One of the chief jobs of the Electoral Commission is to ensure participative democracy and a high turnout rate. Just go do something about it, like fixing the register. The other thing is, there are 2 dogs' dinners that the Electoral Commission, they got 90% of it right. The Wicklow-Wexford constituency and the Cork North Central constituency cannot be sustained in the future. This Mallow being mixed with the north side of Cork makes no sense at all.
It's chalk and cheese.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like, just put your hand up and fix it.
Okay, we're going to leave it for this edition of Path to Power. We'll have loads more next week. But if you want more Path to Power chat, we have a subscriber edition, which I'm sure you know of by now.
Lots of goss in that one this week.
Lots of goss, and lots of your brilliant questions to be answered as well in that. That subscriber edition becomes available Monday morning. It's a mere €6 a month to get your extra week's fix of Path to Power. So pathtopowerpodcast.com is where you can get that. So, from me, Matt Cooper.
And from me, Ivan Yates.
Thank you very much to Aidan and Tom for looking after everything as well. And we'll be back next week. Talk to you then.